So hey guys, tournament report. I went 6-1 on day one of the Pro Tour. We're not going to talk about day two, but we are. But, let's have a bit of a tournament report. Hope you guys find this interesting. I always do them after my events. I always get pretty positive feedback, so I'll speak to you all soon. All right, so just got back from the Pro Tour in Lille. This was like a complete opposite of New Jersey for me. We've just kind of finished massive heat wave in the summer in the UK. We've kind of just finished, summer holidays, projects at work, like all this kind of stuff. So whereas like I went into the Pro Tour in New Jersey with we'll say 60, 70 games on the deck that I played. I actually only managed to go into the Pro Tour this time with about 5 or 6 games on the deck that I played, which is obviously just drastically underprepared for the tournament. And as we always say, the reps get you the wins. So, it's not good enough really to show up and expect to do that well with the deck. There were, however, a few things in my favor. The first thing is, of course, was that the deck that I played was given to me by Jamie Faulkner, who most of you have probably heard of. He's quite a decent UK player, a friend of mine. Him and some other people have been working on this deck, and I just said, look, Jamie, I'm in a pretty bad place. I haven't had a chance to play the game in ages. Do you have that list I can play? Can I have that list? And he gave it to me. It was a very nice gesture. Obviously, I didn't have sideboard notes or anything like that. I was just kind of winging it. But he was like, look, just play this deck. It's reasonably optimized. We'll see how it goes. And I said, okay, cool. That's all I need. Let's go with it. And also, the deck that he gave me is Fi and it is Ninja. And, Fi and Katsu do play quite differently. But there are fair bits of crossover in terms of reading the tempo shift, in terms of figuring out what a good mask threaten card is. It's not something like a snatch. You don't want to risk threaten drawing 2 cards. Unless you're desperate for your opponent to block or they have no armor. It is something like a Phoenix Flame, for example, a lot of the time, where you're just putting 1 in and saying, okay, give me a piece of armor or a 3-card block, or I draw off mask. And one of the great things actually about Fi is that you can do that twice in a turn. You can threaten masks twice in a turn with Go Again. And by doing that, actually force 2 cards out of your opponent's hand that way. And then if you mix in something like Engulfing Flame Wave, you're also actually forcing 3 cards out of your opponent's hand or 4 cards just to get them to stop you doing this. And once they start running low on armor, the deck just really starts to power through. So I was on Fi. It's a Ninja. That kind of gave me a solid basis of how I need to approach various matchups. We also had a bit of a chat about sideboarding. Later on during the tournament, I talked to a few other people about sideboarding, what they'd learned, that kind of stuff. So I kind of built a bit of knowledge on the fly. How did it go? Well, the long and short is, on day 1, I went 6-1. So I went 2-1 in the draft. I drafted an a Dromai deck that was just pretty decent. I played 2 Fis in a row, lost 1 very close game, beat the second one. There were only 2 Fis in our pod, so you can imagine their decks were quite good. And then I got up against an Icelander, which obviously is where Dromai is stronger, and I finished the game with a Necria, an Uvia, a Themai, and 6 Ether Wings on the board. So you can imagine how that game went. Into the CC, playing this deck for the first time in a competitive constructed event, and arguably for the first time into some matchups, I will say the deck did actually perform in the way that people told me it would. I was being able to be very aggressive. People didn't really know what they were handling on day 1. So, I went up against an Oldhim who tried to fatigue my deck, which obviously doesn't work against Fi, which a lot of Oldhims now know if they've been testing. And I basically didn't lose a single point of life that game because he only hammered me 3 times. And each of those times I had a defense reaction, which I had been saving for the inevitable Oak and Old sort of style situation. But ultimately, he just took Phoenix Flame damage every turn, took Lava Burst here and there, and I basically whittled him down. I went up against Tariq Patel playing Dash, which was quite interesting because Jamie had told me that his strategy for the event for Dash was just to sideboard differently and try and fatigue it. So I applied that strategy. A key part of that strategy was keeping things like Erase Face and Command and Conquer so that whenever I thought Tariq was setting up a good turn, like a maximum velocity turn, I presented a 6 power attack at the end of my chain so that he basically had to block it or lose his arsenal or not be able to boost. And that way he couldn't get maximum velocity off. And also, he didn't see those attacks coming necessarily. So he would take a lot of damage from my chain to try and get a maximum velocity turn off. And then you finish the chain with something like a Command and Conquer. it makes kind of a rough dynamic for Dash to try and get through the damage. The rest of the time I was just blocking. Things went really nicely. Okay. Then I played a Phi Mirror. I think the Phi Mirror was first against someone else playing a very similar list. We had a few more reps with it, but I got a bit lucky and managed to sort of get them out while I still had 5 life out. Again, some of that experience from playing Katsu for quite a long time carried over in that environment and let me kind of, figure out where to eke out little advantages by playing, the ninja well, even if it's a different ninja. And then I played the last game of the day on Saturday was against, what was it against? Oh no, it was another Phi mirror, but this time it was into combo Phi. And the combo Phi list was not as good as it basically is just not as good into the mirror as the list that we were running, because combo Phi does that one big explosive turn. Whereas the deck that I was playing just threatens mask draws twice, once or twice every turn. So you're kind of in a situation where we're going, okay, you have your big turn. His big turn took me from 39 to 16 life. But at the point at which he got his big turn set up, I'd already been chipping him away, got him down to like 21 life. And once all of his equipment was gone, his armor was gone. He'd used Mask of the Pouncing Lynx. I still had Mask of Momentum up. It was basically a case of me just going, here's a mask threaten, here's a mask threaten, block a bit, here's a mask threaten. And basically he had to block every turn. His life went down when he didn't because he was trying to push damage through, and you kind of just win that matchup. So that was really good, actually. And then day 2 happened. Let's start off with a few things. So I didn't have a lot of reps on this deck. I'm quite frustrated with Uprising Draft overall. Uprising Draft for me, we have this bad situation where it's like you can draft an amazing Dromai deck and still lose to a mediocre Phi deck. Same with Icelander. It's very hard to actually sit there and say drafting anything but Phi is the right decision. And a lot of people I know have just gone in and said, I'm drafting Phi every time and have won a lot of games with that strategy. Personally, I prefer Icelander. But I'll draft whatever it feels appropriate because I just want to keep drafting my seat and I want to see how that plays out. Though signaling is also really weird in this set for various reasons. But this isn't turning into a draft review video. There's been plenty of those, and you guys know I'm just not really a fan of Uprising Draft. I don't personally think it's very good. But of course, what we are here to talk about is how I did on the day. On the morning of day 1, on the morning of day 2, I basically drafted Phi. Phi was a really good seat for me. I had a Dromai to my right, Icelander next to him, and then another Phi there, but I had basically 2 in between. And then to my left, I had Icelander, Dromai, Phi, basically. So I think there were 3 Phis in the pod. I was right next to someone drafting Icelander, right next to people. So I was in a really good seat for Phi, so I drafted Phi. I made, I think, one mistake in the draft, which wasn't taking a Tide Flippers early on, because I didn't realize, I think, in the pick 2 that I was going to be on Phi. I'd started off with a Sash or a Blaze Headlong, and I was like, okay, maybe I'm still going to be on Dromai. That I haven't really forced it. I didn't force it as hard as I could have forced it. So then I did, and I was like, damn, I really should have taken that Tide Skippers. But I also kind of was like, if I might get one of these later on, which I didn't. I got all the other equipment slots. I just didn't get a Tide Skippers, which was frustrating. I ended up going 2-1 in that draft. I played, unfortunately, the other Phi. I played one of the other Phis straight away. Won the dice roll and then just basically lost on variance. So, that's like a 3-turn game. So he went first. I blocked out. That was fine. I think I took 1 damage. Fine. I draw up a great hand. I sink him down to I think 11 or 10. And then he comes back and puts me down to 13. And then I draw a full hand of yellow and blue 2 blocks. And he comes in for like 16 damage over 5 attacks. And I'm like, I block all of it. But then he gets another full hand and comes at me again. I block as much as I can. Basically, that one hand of all blues and yellows just completely blew me out of the water. Then I played an Icelander. Did Icelander? It was. Then I played an Icelander. And essentially the lack of the Tide Slippers kind of lost me that game. But again, also I drew a really sort of weak hand in terms of like on turn I think 3 I drew this really really bad hand that just didn't push any damage, um and it just sort of went out of the water. Also the Icelander had like Insidious Chill and put that on the table really early, so it was kind of like I was fighting this uphill battle against Insidious Chill. And it was like, what do I actually do against this, because I'm losing tons of cards from my hand but I'm still coming through for damage, and I just really just needed a red or two more just to push some damage. Because obviously you can't block Icelander's AB that much. You don't even have AB, and if you have AB it's just one. You kind of do have to race, and if you don't get the racing cards, you can't actually do it, which is a bit frustrating. So that kind of happened, and then I'm 0-2 after going 6-1, so I'm starting to get a bit sort of frustrated. And then I get paired. It was interesting. Like Gem is really weird when it does draft in the middle of pods. I don't know if people know this. Like, because I started on 6-1, I got paired against and I was 0-2. I got paired against the person who was 1-1 in our pod, that started the pod on 5-2. So he had already won a game in our pod. I probably had the worst deck because I was on 0-2. But for some reason, because we started the draft on different scores, he actually got paired into me, which I view as being quite weird. Like, I should play the other 0-2. I should play the other person in the draft who is on the same score as I am in the draft, right? Otherwise, I'm punished for going into a mixed draft pod, as I'm being unlucky, basically, to be the bottom of the 6-1 bracket and then get put in with the 5-2s. Because even if I lose one game, I'm still going to have to play against people who've won a game. And I could still basically be in a situation where I'm punished even more for going into a draft on higher rankings than I was, than I would be if I just went in on lower rankings. So that's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting to see that happen in practice, because I've heard of it happening, but it hasn't happened to me. But it's kind of really interesting to see how that went. And obviously I was a bit salty at the time because I thought I should be playing the other 0-2. Like, I mean, I just lost 2 games in a row. I didn't want to go up against someone whose draft deck was good enough to win 1 game. I wanted to go up against the other person who was also failing in the draft, right? Thankfully, I managed to pull that game out. So I actually left the first draft on day 2 still alive for top 8. So by that, I mean I was 6-3. 7-3, which means that if I didn't lose a single game in CC, I would I would make the top 8. And the thing is, I had gone 4-0 yesterday, so I was feeling, at least, thank God we're out of draft. I'm much more comfortable on the CC deck. It feels like a ninja. Let's go and play some CC. And then CC started off with a game against Francesco Gorgio, who's one of the very good players in the UK, on Oldhim. Maybe a little overconfident going into this game, thinking, hey, I 40-0'd an Oldhim yesterday, how hard can this be? Francesco plays a much more aggressive version of Oldhim, which I knew already before I started playing him, because I've played him before at UK events. And he came in, basically, it kind of felt like, in some ways, he got all of the things he needed to get to lock me down, and my deck didn't do what it needed to do to dodge it. And by that, I mean, like, he saw his 2 this rounds on me quite early. He saw his 3 crush the week quite early. When he crushed the week to me, like, normally my deck can probably take crush the week and come back in with a mounting anger, blaze headlong. Like, I have quite a lot of 4s, but every time he crushed the week to me, I had just a handful of 3s, and it just wasn't going to work. And then one crush the week, I was kind of really nicely set up to actually come back with a decent attack, but that was the one where he had the pummel. And then he had some nice, like, snow unders and stuff like that. So he's very heavily teched against Fi. Also, like, I did kind of play badly. Like, this is what I'm going to talk about. On day 1, I was really happy because every game I played was clean. I went home, I slept really badly. I woke up just not feeling out of it. Came into the draft, 1-2 in the draft, and then went straight into CC, and I was still just not feeling like 100%. So, like, for example, when Oldhim ice reacts you, and you have a blue in your hand, the appropriate thing to do is not to put the blue back on top of your deck, right? It's to trigger Flamescale Furnace, pitch the blue, and get 2 resources, right? So that you can still sword, Phoenix Flame, etc. I didn't do this, right? And I didn't do this later again when I played Icelander, because I was clearly just not functioning as well as I should be, and I didn't really deserve to win. That being said, the Oldhim game is still not super favorable for Oldhim. He still ended up on 6 life. He had to take a lot of damage to try and finish me off. And in the end, he only successfully finished me off with a Macho Grand. And obviously, that's how the game goes against Guardian. They get your armor, and then they come in with that final dominate to finish you off. But it did feel like for a while there, we were kind of on a knife edge where Phoenix Flame was chipping him down. He was down to 6 life. I had pushed a decent chunk of damage through. And if I had maybe had one less turn of control, I actually would have pushed it through. So that's quite interesting. So that's old him. Close loss knocked me out of contention for the top 8, but still money to be won, still PTIs to be won, top 32s, top 64s. If I win a top 64, I pay for my entire trip because I'm coming from the UK. My trip was only 300 quid plus food. So, I pay for my entire trip. It's actually really cool. So that's where we went. Next game I played versus a Briar. It was a close game, but unfortunately, Briar is actually quite good into the version of Fi we were running, especially the Briar decks that run a lot of on hits instead of just straight damage. So there was a close game, but he won. Then I'm now like on a losing streak. I think I was then 7-5 and just being like, this is going away from me. I don't even know if I can make top 32 anymore. Then I played up against an Icelander. Now, Icelander is actually a good game for Fi because she doesn't actually put out that much large amounts of damage, and you don't really give her an opportunity to set up any of her combos to deal large amounts of damage. So actually, I was feeling quite good, but again, I did misplay. So, when we get the Brain Freeze coming in, for example, I should be pitching a blue to the Furnace to get some resources. I shouldn't let him Brain Freeze my blue back on top of my deck. So I can't attack. If he Brain Freezes a red, it's fine because I can still sword him. There's lots of little interactions where reps really would have helped me. Not having them really caused the problems there. And then I had one more game against Briar where I kind of got blown out of the water. Again, I say blown out of the water. It was still a close game. The deck I was playing did put out a lot of damage. It did threaten a lot of mass triggers. It forced people to interact with it and block it. But it did still feel like, this is real trouble. This is a real struggle. So that was the Pro Tour. Obviously, I played day 1 of the Pro Tour, day 2 of the Pro Tour, so I didn't play the calling. Then there was the Battle Hardened. Now, the Battle Hardened was weird for me, right? Because I had some weird experiences, notably with judging. So I was playing the Battle Hardened. I drafted this amazing Icelander deck. I got Insidious Chill, pack 1, pick 1, got all the equipment, got everything. I went 3-0 in the first draft. In the second draft, we were there drafting. I was drafting normally, doing my usual drafting. So I pick, shuffle, and then count the cards face down. And the judge was like, "You forgot to shuffle." I was like, "No, I didn't." Dismissed it, whatever. And then the judge came back again. He's like, "You forgot to shuffle." I was like, "I really didn't." This is the next pack, right? A few picks later, and there's 3 cards left. I was like, "I don't think I did. I think I shuffled." He was like, "You didn't. I didn't. I saw you." I was like, "Okay, cool." And then he says it a third time, "Look, you haven't shuffled. This is for a different pick." Again, I think there were 2 or 3 cards left in the pack. I was like, "I'm pretty sure I have." But all these times I was like, we'll say for maybe 95% of the pack, I definitely shuffled. And maybe these 3 things I just forgot. Maybe there weren't that many cards left. Maybe I was just messing around with the cards. I didn't shuffle it, right? Which is fine enough. But for me not shuffling 3 times in the Sunday side event when I'm really tired, and obviously my dyspraxia is flaring up because I'm tired. So, I have that dyspraxia, which is basically a developmental condition, but like a coordination thing. I don't develop muscle memory as quickly as other people. I don't competitively draft all that often. But also when I get tired, I get more clumsy and things go kind of weird. So, I may have forgotten to shuffle. That's fine. It's fine. Fine to be called out on it as well. And the judge didn't do it in a way. I got a little offensive because my brain was in the draft and not in disruptions for things I'm pretty sure I did properly in my head. And maybe I didn't, I can't say that. But in my head at the time, I'm thinking, how would I not have shuffled? I totally shuffled. Leave me alone. I'm trying to draft. But at the end of the draft, the judge then takes me aside and we have a whole huge conversation about why I got defensive, why I wouldn't have shuffled, what my drafting strategy was. I don't my drafting habits are or something. I don't know that I have them. I guess I do. They're still changing all the time. I haven't done that many called drafts. And then he was like, "Why is one of these cards on the bottom of your pile of cards instead of on the top?" And for one, I'm not aware of any rule, and maybe it is in there, and I just don't know, that says the card has to go on the top of the pile. But whatever. He said, like, why have you done that? So clearly he was trying to figure out if I had not shuffled deliberately to try and figure out what my opponents are picking. But of course, I knew what my opponents should be picking because I sent signals to them and I read signals from them. So I knew what my opponents basically were on, but not because I didn't shuffle the pack and I wasn't even watching the packs. But anyway, this started a whole investigation. He was like, do you have people who can corroborate your drafting strategy? I told him about the dyspraxia. I was like, look, I will get defensive if people say I've done physical things wrong because I like to pretend that I do everything correct. I don't always. But I was also fairly sure I had shuffled, and I just didn't like being called on it during a draft because my brain was focused. He was like, fair enough. And then he went and interviewed like Jamie and a few of my other friends, just to talk about my drafting. So at the moment we're at a 25-minute like judge call. I didn't like, basically it lasted for the entire amount of time that it takes to register someone else's pool. I skipped that whole part of the draft. Um, just talking about these three mistakes I made during the draft. And like, I don't, let's be clarified, I don't mind being called up on not shuffling. Like, you need to shuffle. It's very important so that you can't look at your opponent and see which card they've taken and know what class they're likely drafting. But like, you know, given the number of competitive drafts that have happened in Flesh and Blood, and the number that I said I'd been to, which is I think 2 called drafts, maybe the Pro Tour and Nats last year. Like, I don't have a lot of experience, so it's more likely that people will make mistakes. But also, it just seemed very strict for like a Sunday event, which is like, we'll talk about the Sunday event battle hardened thing later. There's a whole segment I want to do on that. But so we'll finish up the tournament report. So I finished this really long judge call. The judge was really amiable. Like, he was like, once he talked to people and he sort of like talked to me and heard my justifications for what might have got wrong, why I got a bit snappy with him, etc., etc. He was pretty chill. He just gave me a misconduct warning and just said, "Look, you need to get better at this." I agreed. So I don't really fault him. Like, I mean, I do wonder if we need that sort of strictness at Battle Hardens, but I don't really fault the way he handled it. Like, he talked very calmly to me. I was obviously a bit nervous because I just had this massive judge call for what I saw a lot of other people doing. Let's put it that way. I'm pretty sure a lot of other people were forgetting to shuffle and doing other stuff. But like, obviously this judge was watching my table especially, and saw these problems and called them out. So, in that situation, that finishes. I go and build my deck. I actually feel like I drafted like a 3-0 Icelander deck. The only matchup I was particularly worried about was the mirror because I didn't get a Spellfire Cloak. But I had a really good deck. And the other thing was that I didn't think anyone in our pod took Dromai. I passed a Themai on pack 1. And then the last card that I passed to my opponent, who I thought was on Dromai, but he was opposite me, so I didn't really care because I wasn't likely to play him, was a Themai. So that's his pick 14, pack 2, Themai. Like, I didn't think anyone was on Dromai in our pod, so I was kind of just like laughing a bit. Let's get them 5. This is going well. And then in my game, now my opponent will probably disagree with this still. I don't really care. This is my podcast. I get to talk about it however I like. I said, and this is how I play Icelander. I resolved a Sigil of Permafrost. I played an Ether Hail Blue from Arsenal. I said, respond to my trigger by playing Waning Moon. When I say that, what I mean is I'm responding to the trigger of Icelander because, let's be honest, I don't necessarily want my opponent to remember that they're getting another Frostbite when they decide to block the Waning Moon damage to stop themselves getting Frostbite from the Sigil of Permafrost. Like, I'm layering triggers to create a situation where, the Frostbite stack, and it just feels nice and clean to me to respond to the trigger from Icelander that creates the Frostbite, right? Maybe that doesn't make sense to other people, but I kind of don't want to resolve part of the Ether Hail and then try and do Waning Moon. I kind of want to resolve the Waning Moon and then start to resolve everything that happened from the Ether Hail. That's just how my brain works, and the game rules allow me to play that way, right? So I play an Ether Hail from Arsenal. That creates a trigger on Icelander to generate a Frostbite. I respond to that trigger by Waning Moon the opponent, which means that he will then have to take arcane damage, and because the permafrost has been fused, he gets a Frostbite. So I said, cool, now you get a Frostbite. And my opponent's like, well, I didn't hear you say that trigger. And I said, well, I'm pretty sure I did. And then we call a judge, and the judge is like, well, you're saying one thing, he's saying another thing. Shall I go and get the head judge to try and figure this out? And I'm just like, at this point, I'm just like, I just lost interest. Like, I just had a 20-minute judge call. I literally did not want to speak to another judge for another second. Like, just zero interest. And I should have fought my corner, right? Because I would not have played that card without saying, you know, and there's a frostbite, respond to my trigger, something like that. I've played Icelander plenty. And also my opponent is like, you know, I don't know. We're in a situation. We're playing in a battle hardened. It's not the most serious of events. You know, he's trying to do something that I think is just really poor form, which is trying to claim I haven't triggered something when it's clearly on the table as a trigger. You know, I obviously say it when I play it, right? Just because I didn't give you the frostbite straight away, I don't have to if I'm responding to the trigger of Icelander. So anyway, he said no. The guy was like, "Should I call the head judge?" And I was like, "Just leave it. How bad can it be?" Obviously, the addition of one less frostbite means I get sword, I get Phoenix Flame, I then healing bomb, I go back up to like 7 life, but then he gets a full hand, and he can just kill me, right? That guy then makes the top 8. I won't say who it was, but that's not the point. I had this opponent, he makes the top 8. Good for him, I guess. I lose one game, and because it's in the battle hunt, if you lose one game, there's actually no point continuing to play because you actually literally have to have a 6-0 or a 5-1 score, and that loss has to be in the last round for even me in contention to get anything out of that event. So I just went, dropped, sat down, sold some cards, sold some playmats to people, and basically just went and got drunk. Like, I guess so. That's my tournament report. It was a pretty rough weekend. Day one obviously felt fantastic. I was doing really well with the deck. I had no business doing well with. Felt really great. Day two kind of brought in the reality check. The hotel room, just the pillow, everything was just bad about, like, not everything, but basically my pillow in the hotel and the pillows they had available were just really, really bad. They were really like synthetic, and they were just making me like, this is too TMI, but I'm going to tell you anyway. They were basically just making me sweat uncontrollably all night, and I was just waking up with this soaking wet pillow and like turning it over, and like, it was like I had a fever, but it was just because the pillow was really crap, and the room light was on, the air conditioning was on. It was like 18 degrees, and I'm here sweating because this pillow. Oh, I could get so mad about it, right? I could get so mad about it. So I was exhausted. I was just, and nothing was going right. I had this really bad draft, which I kind of drafted well and then lost like to variance in the games. I had this really good Phi deck. Like, everyone who looked at it was like, this is a really good Phi deck. And I lose to variance, which is just so frustrating. And then I go into the CC. I play one really close game that knocks me out of contention for the top 8. And then I just basically kind of lose adrenaline a little bit. And the tiredness kicks in. The fact that I'm not going to make top 8 after doing a really strong 6-1 run kicks in. And I basically just end up losing 6 games on the second day and ending up 7-7, just really defeated. And then I go into the battle hardened, which I almost didn't sign up for. It was €65 for 2 drafts with the potential of a third draft, but only 8 people get it. It was 256 people, and the only prizes are for the top 8. So, 248 people get nothing except a €65 price ticket for 2 drafts. I mean, okay, they're called drafts, they take lots of judges, but I would have been much happier if you just sold me like 2 drafts for 20 quid and didn't have like the call part of it, right? And this is kind of the part of the episode, so I wanted to talk about it. The other main topic for this week, because it's one thing that's come up a lot on Twitter, is that this battle hunt really felt like a ripoff. No prize tickets for wins. If you lost one game at all in the battle hardened, it really just felt like a waste of money, right? Because you couldn't make the top 8 anymore, and you were getting nothing for keeping on playing except the second draft, which you would get regardless. Except, of course, to get people out of dropping from the second draft, because they didn't want people not showing up to the tables or drafting and then dropping. They wanted to get the tournament as small as possible to make room for side events. Tournament Center said, look, if you want to drop before the second draft, we will give you 3 packs anyway. Why did Tournament Center do this? What are you going to do if you're in that hall with 3 packs? What are you going to do if you're in that hall with nothing else to do for the rest of the afternoon? Probably going to buy another side event, right? They're probably going to get more money from you. So, I'm not saying that this event was deliberately prized badly to stop people from wanting to play in the battle hardened for the whole day, but like, if we do the maths, that's what it looks like, right? Let's just do that. That's what people are saying on Twitter. That is what the conclusion from some of the community is. I'm not going to come out and say for definite it is, but I'm saying that you could read it that way, right? Let's say it that way, because I don't want to be the source of negativity necessarily. Like, I can do math on business together. It's better to have someone spending £65 and then spending £25. But Tournament Center have been very, very good in organizing events. The event was run smoothly. Judges were treated well. Players were treated well. We didn't really have a lot of drama. There were obviously a few judge calls. There's always a few judge calls. But the event was really smooth, and there was good food on site. Like, there weren't enough like bathrooms in the venue. There was always a queue, but things worked, right. Everything sort of ran smoothly, and Tournament Center deserves being commended for that. That's why we talk about the frictions, right? The Pro Tour was amazing. The judges were amazing. The staff was amazing. I played some amazing games of Flesh and Blood. Some of my friends did really well. Shamir, Matt Fawkes, both people I know from the UK did really well. Shamir's a London player. I know when he started the game. I'm delighted that he's gone to fucking up there. That's one free swear word for the episode. He's gone to top 8 a Pro Tour. It's amazing, right? This guy who started playing the game and last year has just turned around and gone and top 8 at a Pro Tour. Like, amazing. And that money is like so good. And like, you get 6.5 grand, right? 6.5 grand and a gold foil. Like, that is serious amounts of money for anyone. And means Shamir's a bit younger as well. I mean, I think a student. I'm not really sure, but my point is, that's a good chunk of money. I'm delighted that he's won it. Matt Fawkes, obviously one of the best players in the UK, if not the best player in the UK. Caught a lot of flack from the community for a little bit of like head shooting and a little bit of like not great play at the UK Nationals. But like, I will tell you that in the past year since that, he has been a really positive force in the UK community, right? He's still a bit banter. He's still a bit, he jokes about fitness. He jokes about things being crap, and like, he's got a good chat on him, right? But when people ask him questions, he responds. He's really friendly to people who are new to the game. He goes to lots of tournaments. He's polite. He's friendly. He plays really clean. Like, he's genuinely in the past year been, I would say, a really positive influence on the UK community. And he said in an interview that he really wanted to live up to the name or to the title of the UK champion. And I think in general, he probably has, actually. I think he's probably done quite a good job at doing that. I think a lot of the people he's spoken to will say he's made the game better. He's also not pulled any punches talking about its problems and its weaknesses. I think it kind of just shows that, the people you should listen to about the content of someone's character is not Twitch chat. It's not YouTube. It's not that person messed up once in Magic, or that person cheated once in Flesh and Blood, or whatever happened at UK Nationals. It really is just like the community of people who play with that person regularly, right? Who see what he does, who challenge him at top tournaments. So, I think, like, anyone who's watching this video from overseas who has a bad perception of Matt Fawkes, like, he did some things, but just get over it. Like, we quite like having him around. He's quite good for the game, I think. Brings a lot of critical thinking and obviously deck building talent, things like that. So that's kind of what I want to say about that. Top 8 was great. Watched the VOD, fantastic games. Commentary was really fun. I had the pleasure to talk to Tannen a bit. I talked to Pleasant Kenobi a bit. Both really nice guys, both really great people to be around. And it seems like all the LSS staff had a really good time as well. The Emperor spoiler had everyone like really buzzing. Like, showing a card like that at an event like that is just the marketing like perfect move. You can't really you can't really underestimate exactly how good how good of a marketing move it is to show a card like that to a packed room full of people who left the event just talking about it. I will say that Warrior Wizard is totally a rune blade. You're not fooling anyone. Like, oh my god, he does magic and he hits people with a sword. It's a rune blade. The Emperor is a I'm not swearing twice. The Emperor is a rune blade, and I will not hear anyone tell me anything different. Rune blade, rune blade, rune blade. Right? The only beauty is that we can obviously print. They could have just made him. They make him a royal rune blade, right? Brackets. He can play warrior and wizard cards, which is what rune blade should have been able to do the entire time. But no, right? The Emperor is still cool, okay? And hopefully we are getting more heroes in Uprising, not Uprising, Dynasty. I'm still hoping for. I'm thinking we're gonna get a royal wizard Kano, who can share some of the cards with the Emperor and like bulk out both of their card pools that way. I'm hoping. I think we're gonna get like a mech warrior, which has like a mechanologist, which has a dagger of some kind, like a mech dagger. I also think we might get an adult Kasai. I'm still rooting for an adult Kasai, maybe a draconic adult Kasai, because you can think like Saber, Lava Burst is actually a pretty cool line for a warrior to take. So adult Kasai, come on, that'll be pretty cool. And I think the set has a lot of potential. I also heard like maybe hints that we're gonna get a lot of treasures. John Warden, so Fluke and Box, was hinting to me that there might be like some treasures hidden in the set, some more marvels that we haven't seen before. So maybe like Marvel armor or Marvel weapons or something from armories in Volcor. That would be really amazing. I'm obviously not going to speculate with miles from spoilers, but that kind of little tidbit that he leaked my way was really keen. We've completely gone off tangent, right? To finish up the episode and to finish talking about the battle hardened, LSX really needs to decide what the hell they're doing with the Sunday event at these tournaments, right? Most of the time when I have been to these kind of tournaments before, especially in Elfavar and things like that, the Sunday event had a bit of something on the line, but the main purpose that it existed for was to keep everyone who came happy with the amount of time that they'd given you for the event, right? To keep everyone who didn't make day 2 of the main event happy with their weekend. Not to get as much money from them as possible, not to get to a situation where, they play 2 rounds and then drop, literally to keep them playing all day and make them think, well, I didn't make the main event, but I still had this really great competition and I still got this prize. Every other big card game I've played, and let's face it, I haven't played a lot of Magic, I haven't played a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Or anything like that, but the LCGs at least understood this really well. Someone is traveling to an event for me for a weekend, I'm going to put them in a really competitive crucible on day 1 and ask them, are you good enough to get to day 2? Are you good enough to make the top 8? If they don't, okay, and it's a long weekend, then obviously you do something like a calling, a second competitive event. Can they make the day 2? Can they make the Sunday? Right? But if it's a 2-day event or if it's a 3-day event, that Sunday tournament isn't there to be super competitive. It's not there to be super grueling, in my opinion. Now, people do disagree with me. Some people only play Fab for that competitive angle. But there are loads of people who are tired of paying for side event tickets by Sunday. They're tired of being competitive after the calling and the Pro Tour didn't go well for them. And they basically just want a reason and a justification to say, I played a long day of Fab, I had a really good time, and I got this promo, or I got something like this. They don't want one draft, I lost a game, now I can't get any prizes. They don't want £65 for 2 drafts. They want bring your favorite deck, play all day, and then however many wins you can get something fun from the prize wall. That's literally what the prize wall is there for. Like, what the hell is the prize wall there for if no one in the Pro Tour can get prizes, no one in the calling can get prize tickets, and no one in the battle hardened can get prize tickets? So if I go to a big event like this Pro Tour weekend, which I did, and I play in the Pro Tour and the calling and the battle hardened, I have 0 prize tickets, which means the prize wall is just not there for me. And if the prize wall isn't there for the people who are there for the really big events that are happening at the weekend, what the hell is it there for, right? Just to fund side events and make people spend money on booster drafts to farm tickets. Does that really seem like a good use of a prize wall? Does that really seem like a good use of like cold foil frostbite, cold foil spectral shields? What if every single person who entered the battle hardened got given a cold foil frostbite or a cold foil spectral shield for reaching the end of the day, or for like say playing half of the rounds? So a round 4 participation prize after the second draft, maybe round 4. So you've done the second draft, you played your first game, you might be ready to start calling it a day. Someone comes around, hands you a spectral shield or a frostbite. You think, okay, well, I did 2 drafts, I got this really cool promo, I'm feeling reasonably better now. Instead, you're like, well, because I decided to do 2 drafts, I lost my chance to play in side events, which were cheaper. I lost my chance to win any prize tickets, and I actually just leave the venue with nothing. Like, I was in the Pro Tour, so I got mat, sleeves, and that's it. That's all I got this weekend, right? Now, for the Pro Tour, it's fine. The prizes are, like, quite generous. They go down to 60-second. If I had done better on day 2, I would not be complaining. I would have some money. But is every event that happens at these sort of competitive weekends to be held to that standard, to be held to the if you don't get to the top 8, go bleep yourself. Is that what we want from Fab? Or should there at least be one event on the weekend that's actually kind of generous and is actually like gathering up all the people who are tired, disappointed, their weekend hasn't gone the way they wanted it to, they're worried about their future in the game, gathering all those people up and saying, look, come and have some fun. Come and have some fun. Come and get some participation prizes. Come and play all day with your mates. The pressure is not as serious. And, if you do amazingly well, you can have this really cool prize. If you don't do amazingly well, pick up some tickets, get some prizes from the prize wall. That is my takeaway from the Pro Tour. Obviously, there's loads more that we can talk about. We'll talk about next week because I am going back now that it's a bit cooler. Now that I'm back from holiday, we are going back to like regular scheduled episodes every week or every 2 weeks, depending on what's been happening. We are going to talk about Prism. We are going to talk about the new meta once Prism goes next week. That's going to be really exciting, but I don't want to cover it in this episode today. And then, of course, we are also going to talk about some other things, right? Not online, February, fighting, and things like that. So we'll cover that. Also, let me know if you're interested in this. People who are listening to the end of the episode, obviously you are my big fans, so I do appreciate you guys. I am thinking about starting, now that we've got Flesh and Blood online, the major obstacle to me streaming, I love streaming card games. The major obstacle to me streaming was just that on TTS, if I'm not talking to my opponent, it just doesn't really feel like there's a point, right? It's there for me to chill with my mates and chat, right? With Flesh and Blood Online, I can get games. I don't have to talk to my opponent. It is all automated. So I am thinking about starting streaming on Monday evenings, Mondays or Tuesdays. I haven't yet decided. Maybe Thursdays. And I'm just basically trying to gauge people's interest in just watching me play. Because it's like Fab, it'll be anywhere between 2, 3, 4 games on a night. I'll probably play for like 2 hours on Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday. And if people are really keen, I might do more. But, this is actually a way that I can deliver gameplay to people and talk about fun decks that are going on in more of a demonstrative way. So if you're interested in that, let me know. As always, I do still have this huge stack of Herald of Rebirths. Those are available to my Patreons. It's pretty much basically a subscribe to Patreon and I get to send you some Herald of Rebirth things. Existing Patreons, if you are wondering why I haven't sent them out, it's pretty much for all the reasons that I haven't played much Fab. I know I am behind in my duties. I do apologize. Anyone who is subscribed to my Patreon or has cancelled but was subscribed when I said they would get them, I will still be sending Herald of Rebirth to you. If you are one of my Patreons and you haven't given me your address, I will be reaching out to you to get your address. I have just been incredibly busy, traveling a lot, really tired. So, here's my apologies. I do hope to bring the channel back with a bit more energy. I do still quite like Flesh and Blood, though it is very sad that my lovely bloody Prism deck is now retired. But I think the game will be better that she's gone, and we'll talk about that more next week. So have a great week. I'll talk to you all soon, and bye.